Hi, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today I am going to unbox, dye, and review the Kinky yarn from makers Mercantile. They reached out to me and offered to send me some of this bulky blanks that you can dye and unravel to knit or crochet with. And I am really excited to test out this product and give my full opinions on it. So since this package is PR, I'm not sure if it's packaged exactly the same way as your order might be, but let's see what is inside. And these are my little yarn scissors from when I was a kid. All right, so let's pull out, ooh. Okay, so we're wrapped up beautifully in some tissue paper, which I can only assume is the Makers Mercantile logo right here. And let's open this up. Ooh, oh, it's soft. This is a Kinky yarn, and they have sent me 3 wheels of it. I actually really like the way that this is packaged up. It feels really sturdy and looks beautiful. So what they did is they took some yarn and wrapped it around these last few edges so that way it stays in this cute little wheel. To be honest, these felt smaller than I expected. So I actually ran and grabbed my scale to weigh them. And the 3 wheels ranged from 192 grams to just over 200 grams. And that includes a little hang tag. But I believe that this is still within the acceptable industry standard for like variation of yarn weight. That being said, 10 grams can matter if you are playing yarn chicken at the end of a project. So that's just something to keep in mind as you are planning out your project. This yarn is 100% superwash wool, and it is 147 yards per 200 grams. And they recommend that you use US size 10 to 13. But I am happy that there's 200 grams in here, knitting needles with this yarn, which should actually be enough for a hat. Whereas if it was only 100 grams, that might not quite be enough. All right, so one thing I do really like about the Makers Mercantile website is that they have this little poem about the Kinky yarn. And I'm gonna read it to you right now because I think it's cute. Wait, you may first uncoil it, but premature unraveling could definitely spoil it. Speckle it with a brush or dip it in some dye and have a little fun, don't be shy. Now it's time to unravel. No, it's not a sin. Just be sure you knit those kinks right in. Wear your finished attire with confidence and sass, knowing you and your custom piece are totally badass. That's cute. I think that that's like a good introduction to a blank for people who've never used a blank. However, it doesn't anywhere really call it a blank, so I'm not sure. But the nice thing is that when you do unravel a blank, you do get crimped and kinks in the yarn, and they're clearly embracing that with this product. The yarn is a single ply, and it looks like it's sort of a medium to low twist. It's honestly really, really soft, and I already feel like it would make a wonderful hat. Or cowl, or whatever else you might want to make with it. Now, how are we going to dye this today? I have not yet decided. I know that the team that created this likes to play around with different techniques. They've played with Sharpies and some other unconventional things, which you know is right up my alley. I think I might go in and play with the first one using acid dyes today to see how this superwash yarn absorbs the color and what I think of it. After a lot of internal and external debating, I have at least 2 visions of what I want to do with this Kinky yarn. One of them, at a later date, I'm going to want to dye in this wheel form, sort of like tie-dye. I think it would be really fun to dye it like that, especially if we preserve some white in the middle. I think that that could be really gorgeous. Today, I want to take advantage of this blank and dye something that is going to be self-striping using some immersion techniques. So the first thing we need to do is open up. Okay, well that was easier than I thought, but I don't want to unravel it. Oh, that actually, I need to find sharp scissors. So note to self that it was a little easier to get that off than I thought. But this brings us to one of my concerns with these blanks. This is a gorgeous, lofty, single ply yarn. I love single ply yarns, but my concern is that when we unravel this, will the yarn like lose some twist and therefore break? So that's something that we will explore as we go about this. But this is really beautiful, not super long. It actually sort of reminds me of a belt right now. As a blanket, it is pretty densely knit, which means that however you dye it, you will get some mottling and some resist from the way these stitches are. This isn't a problem at all because this is a feature that I love from using blanks and I think is great to take advantage of. But it is something to keep in mind. For example, I think that if you were to spray both sides of this blank, you would get really shallow penetration of color, and so when you unravel it, you would get some really cool speckles. Similar to what I've done doing the rainbow blanks with color mist sprays in the past. But I think this is my plan for today. I have divided this into thirds, and I'm gonna dye half of it one color, the other half another color. This is gonna be a more traditional self-striping technique, but you know, the options of what you can do here are absolutely limitless, and you can have fun and be as artistic and wild as you want, just like with any other blank. I am going to let the blank pre-soak in some plain tap water for at least 30 minutes. I want all of the fiber to be as saturated as possible. I know that we're not going to get a solid no matter what, but I do want to get some good color penetration, so that's why I want to just give it plenty of time to get nice and saturated. For our dyes, we are going to play with Jacquard Gunmetal and Dharma Radioactive, both starting out in a 1% stock solution, which means that there was 1 gram of dye dissolved in 100 milliliters of water. There are many different ways we could go about applying the color, but I decided using 2 1-quart mason jars would be a really effective way to do it since I have these materials on hand. And then when we're ready, we will place these in a double boiler type situation to heat the yarn. I started with 2 cups of water in each jar, and now we're going to add in some dye. Since the jars will be relatively crowded, we will get some tonal variation, but the penetration I want is within the interior of the blanket itself. So we'll see how that happens. I'm going to add a 1/4 cup, or about 60 milliliters, of radioactive to 1 jar. This is a beautiful neon green. And then we are going to add a 1/2 cup, or about 120 milliliters of gunmetal into the other jar. Since we've got 200 grams of yarn, we're going to have about a 1.2 DOS of the gunmetal and about a 0.6% DOS of the radioactive, approximately. Since our radioactive jar currently has a little less liquid, I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of water. And then using dedicated dye equipment, because nothing is food safe, I'm going to make sure these are stirred up. The yarn pre-soaked maybe for closer to an hour. And now I am going to, well, first we'll let that end go in. It's approximately evenly in thirds. Now we are going to place it into our jars. As my dog rings his bell, we're going to place it into our jars and sort of press it down. There's no acid in here yet. All right, what about our overlap portion? I'm going to take this and dip some into our gunmetal, sort of move it over and dip the rest into some radioactive. Right now it will be paler than the rest, but I'm going to just leave things to soak up for probably 10 to 15 minutes, and every once in a while with my gloved hands I'm going to come and just dip. Oh, you can't really see. Come and just dip that in there, and come and just dip this in there. One thing I do want to keep in mind and check is this center area, and we're actually getting some color penetration in there, which is good. I don't know if we're getting color penetration in these regions all the way to the center, but it does seem to be soaking up color really, really nicely. And you can even lift it up and lower things down more, just so that way it stays nice and moving around. I'm feeling pretty impressed so far. Okay, let's carefully raise this up, and I'm going to pour in a tablespoon of vinegar on each side. You couldn't really see me do it behind the gunmetal, but I promise it is there. And again, I'm dunking into the different sides. I actually can remove these spoons right now. I'm trying to keep each hand on just one color, but I'm sort of dunking, and my work surface is protected with a shower curtain, so that will really help things. But doing this also is going to get some vinegar on these like intermediate pieces. Okay, now another thing I want to do now is I want to add a little bit more liquid, just so that way we can kind of be a little bit filled up in each of these jars. That way, at least like when we're dealing with these overlaps, it's a little bit less of an area. And now I am going to carefully take it over to the double boiler. The water level can go all the way up to where the surface is on our jars. It's a little low right now, but I'm going to go ahead and turn on the heat and start heating things up. And I'm going to add more water until maybe we're about like here or so. If you want to try this technique with mason jars and you don't have a pasta insert like I have here, you can add water to your dedicated dye pan, but maybe place like a towel or washcloth on the bottom. I find that when the jars rest directly on the bottom of the pot, they rattle around and it makes me nervous. And as things heat up, again, I'm going to come and dunk into one color, then dunk into the other. But actually, a lot of color has absorbed already. This is a superwash yarn, so colors are going to start striking quickly once we add that acid. And now it's going to take a while for things to heat up in here. I am going to cover it so we will get steamed as well, but I'm going to go ahead and let everything heat for 45 minutes, which should give us plenty of time for us to start simmering and get nice and hot. Okay, it's been 45 minutes and let's check in on this yarn. The water around it's looking a little green because I think there was some green on that jar. There is a bit of color left in either of them, but oof, I like those tonals in the green. I'm going to go ahead and add another tablespoon of white vinegar to each jar. And I'm lifting and lowering to sort of mix things. And it's okay if some splashes over. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to go ahead and leave the heat on low for another 15 minutes, but then I'm going to turn off the heat and let things cool off here in the pot, and then we will check back in. The yarn is completely cooled, and let's remove it to look. There's a tiny bit of bleeding left in the green color. Ooh, but look at that tonal variation. But what? Where did this brown come from? Water looks cleared, but there's this like, what? A brown? Okay. Our gunmetal turned brown. I've heard reports of some people having this happen with Dharma Navy recently, but not with, I haven't heard of that with gunmetal. Interesting. So we are going to have some rinsing here, just because there is, I wouldn't call that bleeding yet, just because it was the Like there was some color left in the container, but we might get some bleeding. We will see. I just added some clear dish soap. Slight, but not so bad. I'm going to go ahead and rinse this a handful of times to see if the bleeding is a big issue or what. I just noticed that we are unraveling a little bit from the washing, but look at those specks, those resist marks. I'm really excited. Even if it turned brown, at least it goes with the green, but still. But you can see that the bleeding has stopped. So I'm gonna just finish rinsing out the soap, put this Kinky yarn through my automated spin dryer, and then hang it up to dry so we can come and unravel it. The blank, all things considered, held up really, really well during the dyeing process. We only unraveled a tiny bit. The part that was part of the tie did fluff up, and this feels unspun here at this end, but it is a single ply yarn, so I'm not horribly surprised. We've done a lot of washing and moving of it while wet. But now we need to turn this into the kinky yarn we have been promised by unraveling it. You absolutely could knit directly from this tube, but we are going to unravel. And here is our kinky yarn in all of its glory. You can see the colors that we get from this outside where we had that color, the resist marks from those stitches giving us those beautiful reverse speckles, and the yarn, true to its name, is very kinked, but when you spread it out, like the character of those speckles is so lovely. The penetration of color is small. I could have done something with more water volume, but if I pull it, you can see that resist in the stitches, and wow, this color really did break, and it broke to a brown. I am gonna have to clearly try breaking gunmetal and see if I can get this to happen intentionally. Knitting with crimped yarn like this is not my favorite. You certainly can, and I think it's beautiful and lovely and could give some added fun texture to your finished project. But personally, if I was going to unravel the blank versus knitting with it straight, I would unravel it onto a nitty knotty, and that's what I'm going to go do right now. You know, one thing I do wish that I did was, instead of dividing it into thirds like that, I had divided it into thirds in a circular form, so that way I would have gotten, rather than like some short stripes and long stripes, I would have gotten more complete stripes that were about the same size. But nevertheless, I think that this is still a really, really fun yarn and a fun colorway. I will say that except for that end part, the twist seems to be staying intact really, really well, and I'm not concerned about the yarn breaking at all. There is one join in the yarn that I found as I was unraveling it. It is a little bulky, but not so bad, and this is how much of the blank we had left when I found the join. This colorway is really cool. Not what I was expecting. I thought I was going for this sort of neon green and navy-ish kind of colorway. This brown has me surprised and perplexed. Really surprised and really perplexed. Really, really, really. But that is not a fault of the yarn itself. That is a dye issue. The modeling in that green is lovely as well. So what do I think? I really like having a bulky blank available on the market, and I think that the blank from Maker's Mercantile is a really good value. $24 for 200 grams I think is a fair price, especially for a knit blank that you don't have to knit yourself. It unraveled super, super smoothly. The yarn is soft and luscious. What I am going to do at this point with the yarn on the nitty knotty is I'm going to go wet it and then hang it up to dry to relax that crimp, that kink a little bit. But that's my personal preference. You can knit straight from your kinky yarn in any way that you want. I was disappointed to find a join in here, but that happens in the industry. Maker's Mercantile, thank you so much for sending me some of your kinky yarn to play with. I am really excited to dye up the other two wheels in 2020 and play around with some other techniques. What would you really like to see? Let me know in the comments below, and yeah, we'll see what I turn the other 2 wheels into. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and so make sure you're subscribed and have your notifications turned on. I release 2 new yarn dyeing videos every single week without fail, even during the holidays, and you do not want to miss a thing. Hanukkah is coming up, and starting on December 22nd, there will be a brand new video as part of the Hanukkah special every night. And so we're going to end 2019 with a lot of really, really awesome content, and I cannot wait for you to see it. Thank you so much for watching.